welcome back to Let's Play Assassin's Creed Brotherhood as we continue with the database entries. So we had one set of people to go through, and then, well, we got locations and secret locations and paintings. So we probably won't get through all of this today. We'll see how I feel after running through the targets. But first off, we have Duccio di Luca. Date of birth 1462, profession merchant and trader. After breaking things off with Claudia Auditori, records indicate that Duccio's marriage into the Pazzi family was cut short by their exile following the conspiracy of 1478. Rebounding with several substantial donations to the textile guilds, Duccio became a wool trader exporting Florentine products across Italy. It was not exactly well liked by the business world. The rotund man who sold me the silks tried to charge more florins than the silks were worth, considering me to be uneducated in textile prices. I took him for a rube and purchased only red silks, which fetch a far higher price at market. Now who is the ignorant one? Wrote one wool merchant in Siena, presumably speaking about Duccio, who is referenced several more times in the man's books under various monikers such as Stooge, Pig, and Son of a Whore. Roman shipyard manifests indicate that Duccio bought a small ship in 1490, presumably in an attempt to become an alum trader. Unfortunately, the boat he owned was too small for alum trading, which required a large ship to be profitable. His record books show little to no profit for the years of 1490 to 1496. In 1497, he ceased to carry alum, instead transporting a variety of goods between cities. Some small success was achieved smuggling forbidden merchandise out of Florence during Savonarola's rule. Ultimately, his luck turned sour, and he died penniless in 1520. Medical records are unclear, but his death seems to have resulted from rabies after a starving Roman dog attacked him in search of food. Ercole Massimo, date of birth 1474, profession noble and hermeticist. Born into what many historians believe to be the wealthiest family of Renaissance Rome, Ercole was the result of a lineage that traced its origins to a divine union between Hercules and a nymph. Following the rise of the family's namesake Maximus, who was an important Roman politician and soldier, the family went on to produce two popes, innumerable cardinals, and ambassadors. The Massimo were also great patrons of the arts. The first printed book in Italy was produced in their Roman palazzo. Ercole was no exception to the family tradition. He participated in the formation of a Roman library and partnered with Agostino Chigi, the wealthy Roman banker, to help fund the arts. He even succeeded in convincing Pope Julius II to invite the great painter Perugino to the Vatican to help decorate the papal apartments. At the age of 30, it seems Ercole became heavily invested in the cult teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, whose writings had recently been translated by the Florentine scholar Marsilio Ficino. Along with all the New Age geeky mumble-jumble practicing magic and alchemy, Hermeticists believed in the divine power of man, that man could contain the universe within him, and vice versa, placing the Roman gods and the Christian Judeo-Muslim god on the same level as man. Notice how I was just politically correct there. It's born from fear, not from conviction, so don't get used to it. Ercole joined a Hermetic society in Rome and seems to have devoted significant time to his activities there. The appointment book from the Massimo Palazzo Library lists Leonardo da Vinci as a frequent visitor. One entry describes him as Leonardo, friend to His Excellency Ercole. Perhaps Leonardo shared his search for the Pythagorean temple. Wish I could tell you more, but secret societies don't usually leave records lying around for historians. Yeah, Leonardo does have some pretty loose lips. Cesare Borgia, date of birth 1475 or 1476, profession noble, captain general of the papal forces. Born to Rodrigo Borgia's mistress Venanza, Cesare studied law, then became a cardinal when he was only 18. Meanwhile, his older brother Juan, Rodrigo's favorite, became the captain general of the papal forces. Cesare realized that his life as a cardinal would lead to a dead end. His brother was going to get everything. He knew exactly what he had to do. Juan had to go. By 1499, Juan was dead, and Cesare had become captain general. He married a royal French bride, securing her title and an alliance with King Louis. With the aid of the king's forces, Cesare marched on Romagna. His ruthless drive for power was unprecedented. Get this, when Cesare conquered Faenza, he invited the much-beloved lord of the city, the gallant 17-year-old Astori III Manfredi into his army. Astori and Cesare really hit it off, but Astori posed a threat to Cesare. He was lord of Faenza due to his bloodline. So when Cesare got back to Rome, he had both Astori and his younger brother drowned by tying rocks to their feet and throwing them in the Tiber. Cesare also proved to be a brilliant general. He seized the city of Urbino without a fight through the help of the Pope. The plan was simple. The Pope requested a loan of artillery from the Duke, his supposed ally. Once the Duke had sent the artillery, Urbino was defenseless and Cesare invaded. A cipher to all around them. At one point, Isabella de Este sent Cesare 100 masks to congratulate him on a victory. Cesare's motivations were unreadable by his enemies and his actions notoriously brutal. Rodrigo Borgia, date of birth 1431, profession Pope, leader of the Italian Templars. After his failure to return with a powerful weapon from the vault beneath the Vatican, Rodrigo seems to have been plagued by bad omens. In June of 1500, a steeple from the roof of St. Peter's fell, dislodging an iron beam that came clattering down a few feet from the Pope as he walked through the basilica. The next day, a room in the Vatican collapsed around him. Everyone else in the room was killed, only a piece of canopy wedged above the Pope saved his life. Then a few weeks later, he ended up in bed with a severe fever. Finally, at the end of the year, while hunting, he was charged by a stag. After each of these incidents, Rodrigo seems to have left more and more to Cesare, content to collect indulgences to help fund the Captain General's military campaign and to kill off cardinals if the Florins weren't coming fast enough to restock the papal treasury. He also seemed to take great delight in the women of Rome, engaging in several bodily feasts alongside his daughter Lucrezia. In July of 1503, after the death of Juan Borgia the Elder, a journal entry made by the new papal secretary suggests that a worried Rodrigo moved a strange apple he had kept inside a locked desk out of the castello. Curiouser and curiouser. Oh, wow, that reset it. Okay. I just saw that space was short, so I wanted to make sure I didn't change the order. Micheletto Corella, date of birth 1470, profession executioner. The right-hand man of one of the most notorious hands-off killers in history, Micheletto was usually the last thing Cesare's victims saw. A deadly import from Valencia, Spain, he grew up with Cesare, slightly his elder and always his protector. Not only Cesare's personal executioner, he was also a condottiero, leading armies for Cesare, and at one point, he was the governor of Piombino. Might be easier to dispense with the chit-chat and simply list his known murders. Giulio Cesare da Verona, Lord of Camerino, and three of his sons, Alfonso of Aragon, Duke of Bisceglie and Lucrezia's second husband, Alvarato de Fermo and Vitellazzo Vitelli, strangled simultaneously, Astori Manfredi, the Lord of Faenza, Francesco Troche, the papal secretary, and many more occurred that go unrecorded here. Micheletto was notorious for strangling his victims quietly and disposing of the bodies. Leah di Russo, date of birth 1476, profession smuggler. This lady must have flown way under the radar. Abstergo seems to have the only data on her readily available. Supplying the Templars with secret contraband, Leah di Russo lied and murdered her way into some of the best deals of the century. It's strange, this data was recently created. I wonder what Abstergo's up to. Lance, date of birth 1480, profession thief. I found the brief mention of a thief in Rome called Lance who seems to be connected to a variety of domestic disturbances. According to Abstergo's files, Lance ran with the Cento Occhi gang, which means 100 eyes. I would assume that's a metaphor, but watch out. Ha ha ha. Brother Ristoro, date of birth 1465, profession priest. A brother of the Order of the Minims, court records show he murdered other members of his order who brought his corrupt practices into question. Abstergo's servers say Brother Ristoro vowed a life of piety and poverty, but practiced neither. A paranoid, dangerous man. You know, visiting a priest like that might make confession a lot more interesting. Gaspar de la Croix, date of birth 1466, profession sniper. Found this in Abstergo's database. Gaspar de la Croix is a master weapons engineer as well as an expert marksman. Although the profession of sniper didn't exist yet in the 16th century, Gaspar was something of a pioneer. His skill with a firearm spared him any close confrontations on the battlefield, and Cesare made use of his skill to take down easy targets at the beginning of a fight. Octavian de Valois, date of birth 1448, profession French general. The unexpected crowning of his distant cousin Louis XII in 1498 propelled Octavian, the Baron de Valois, to the front of the ranks in Louis's new Italian campaign. According to the accounts of the king's secretary, the Baron had only formal training, no actual field experience. He then quipped, "The things one does for one's family." Valois encountered Cesare and Juan Borgia when they arrived in France to court Cesare's future wife, Charlotte. They spent a month together at court, at which point the Baron left for Italy. Several letters were exchanged between the two in ciphertext, only recently cracked, discussing something repeatedly referred to as our plans for Italy. The King of France was mentioned as an accomplice to these plans. The Baron de Valois marched into Rome with his men in 1500. For what purpose, it remains unclear. At that point, however, Bartolomeo and his men attacked. Augustine Oberlin, date of birth 1468, profession blacksmith. I found a small nugget of history about this one. He was a Swiss mercenary who survived several battles while in the employ of the Borgia before retiring to his own business. Here's what Abstergo says in the records. Auguste Oberlin spreads Borgia propaganda, often making his point with the head of his hammer. Best to avoid that hammer. Donato Mancini, date of birth 1473, profession captain. A veteran soldier under the Borgia, Donato also served in the city guard. The chroniclers at court describe him as a cold, loyal enforcer and an expert rider. I'm not able to get in very far, but the Abstergo servers contain a small piece of data about him. One of Cesare's top horsemen, Donato Mancini's skill is only surpassed by his ego. That Cesare sure knows how to pick him. Juan Borgia the Elder, date of birth 1446, profession cardinal, and Cesare's personal financier. The first 10 nephews elected to the cardinalship by Rodrigo Borgia, Juan sought out a privileged position in the Borgia court. He helped Cesare negotiate an alliance with the Baron de Valois in 1499, impressing the young Captain General with his knowledge of French taste. An incident recorded by Bouchard, the papal master of ceremonies. Juan and Cesare were seated discussing financial matters when a steward brought in a glass of wine. Juan took a sip, declared the wine to be false, accusing the astonished steward of drinking the real bottle. He then threw the wine over the steward and lit him on fire. Fortunately, the wine was not capable of igniting, but unfortunately the steward was still executed once the small fire was put out. Such incidents must have impressed Cesare, as he shunned Rodrigo Borgia's banker Agostino Chigi to invest with Juan. Juan was gradually put in charge of Rome's finances. He used large amounts of the city's tax money to throw lavish parties for his friends, at one point tossing 100 gold plates into the Tiber after their first use, outdoing Chigi, who had done the same with mere silver. Rome's citizens were also invited to the public areas of these parties, but many still complained privately that their money could be put to much better use. Yeah, I like how these database entries are like, in case you had any sympathy for any of the people you're killing, here's more. Oh, okay, what happened? Oh, okay. In case you had any sympathy, here's why they were really bad people and you shouldn't have sympathy. Silvestro Sabatini, date of birth 1472, profession noble, a member of the Sabatini family and a cousin to Raphael's student Andrea Sabatini. Silvestro worked for the Borgia in return for an elevation of his status. After failing Cesare, records do not indicate how he failed him exactly. There is simply the mention that Silvestro cocked up. Micheletto removes Silvestro's left forearm. Melfat, date of birth unknown, profession doctor. Abstergo's database says, ravaging the poor districts of Rome, Melfato preys on those unfortunate enough to be caught unaware. The only data I could find outside of that was a report of a masked doctor in 1502 seen lurking outside the Rosa in Fiore. This guy seems like really bad news, and I've read a lot of bad news lately. God, ain't that the truth these days? Vieri de Pazzi, date of birth 1454, profession noble. Vieri de Pazzi was more than a bully, he was dangerous. By the age of 15, he was already a trained killer working with his father, Francesco, to take over Florence. Fortunately, he died by Ezio's hand in 1478. And Il Carnificus, date of birth 1473, profession executioner. There's nothing in the history books about Il Carnificus, so I did a little digging in Abstergo's mainframe. Here's what I found. Natural ally for the Borgia, Il Carnificus kills to the roar of an improving crowd. The other small piece of information I could dig up is that he fancies himself as some sort of twisted artist. I guess that explains the crowd bit. I wonder if he does tricks while performing executions, or whether it's all in the subtle way he pulls the lever. Alright, what do we got for... We'll do... Yeah, we'll do secret locations, and I think that'll be it for today. Then we can we'll take a crack at the locations tab next time. The Basilica di San Pietro, the original St. Peter's Basilica, built in 326 as opposed to the epic basilica that exists today, was constructed in the form of a Latin cross. An atrium, called the Garden of Paradise, stood at the entrance, beckoning followers through the main doorways of the church. Unlike pagan temples, which were lavishly decorated, the facade of St. Peter's was plain. Thankfully, Catholicism got over all that when they made the new St. Peter's. Of course, the downside was that the religion became incredibly corrupt, but hey, beauty has to come at a price. The basilica was built on top of the old Circus of Nero, but before you start pulling out your popcorn and cotton candy, this wasn't a modern circus. The Roman crucifixions of Christians was the main act. St. Peter, among many others, was hung up to die there. The basilica was built on top of this anti-Christian site as almost an intentional modification of history by Emperor Constantine, because if it no longer exists, it never happened, right? Pyramide Cestia. This giant tomb was built between 18 and 12 BCE for Caius Cestius, who was both a magistrate and member of the Roman religious corporation known as the Septemviri Hippolunum, which was in charge of creating religious feasts for the gods and distributing swag during parties. During the construction of the Aurelian walls between 271 and 275, the pyramid was built into the bulwark, forming a triangular bastion in an effort to cut costs on the snowballing wall project. You'll notice the faces of the pyramid are far steeper than its Egyptian ancestors. This is attributed to erroneous sketches of the Egyptian pyramids, which acted as the chief reference for its construction. Palazzo Laterano. Originally a palace during the Roman Empire, the Laterano was the home of the Laterani family, who served as administrators for many Roman emperors. Eventually, Constantine himself took control of the building when, in a final act of juvenile dominance over his rival, he married Maxentius' sister Fausta, who possessed the deed at the time. I wonder if Maxentius got the message. In the 4th century, the Laterno became the principal papal residence, but lost favor after two fires in 1307 and 1361. Terma di Diocleziano, perched atop Viminale Hill. The Terma di Diocleziano were the most lavish of all imperial baths built during the height of the Roman Empire. Like the rest, they remained operational until the Goths cut the Roman water supply in 537. After that, much of the structures were converted into various different spaces, i.e. places of worship, commissioned by the Roman Catholic Church, and today they house a collection of funeral art. Just goes to show you, rest and relaxation lead to sin and death. Or maybe that if you fill a tomb with water, it makes a brilliant swimming pool. Terma di Triano. As with many of Trajan's projects, it's believed this massive leisure and bathhouse was designed by Apollodorus. The structure was built atop a section of Nero's ruined Golden Palace and was poetically intended for use by the commoners. In 537, the siege of the Goths destroyed most of the Roman aqueducts, and the Terma di Triano were subsequently abandoned due to the loss of their water supply. Another public works project gone terribly wrong, but I'm sure throwing a few Christians to the lions in the Colosseo made up for it. The Colosseo. Rebecca 84. Set of coordinates Sean took from Subject 16 converges on this landmark. Maybe you should check it out. Well, we already did, so I don't know why that's still there. Constructed from 72 to 80 CE under Emperor Titus, the Colosseum held up to 50,000 spectators and is considered one of the greatest architectural achievements in Roman history. The majority of the shows, be they gladiatorial, dramatic, or otherwise, were privately funded by rich families to demonstrate their opulence, creating spectacles that were universally adored by the people of Rome. Unfortunately, a massive earthquake in 1349 caused large-scale irreparable damage, and the Colosseum was left in ruin. In the mid-16th century, Pope Sixtus V wished to make use of the remaining shell and resolved to convert the structure into a giant wool factory to provide employment for Rome's prostitutes. Sadly, the Pope died before his brilliant idea could become reality. Wait, I did this already. Why can't I still... God damn it, game. It's not letting me exit. Did I not do this glyph? No way, I did these, right?
Loading.
The capitalists think we run these companies for
Yeah,
profit.
I definitely remember this one.
Those fools work for you. Optional slavery in exchange for pieces of paper. Doesn't that strike you as foolish?
Delete, exit, there we go. Yeah, I got the clip for it too, so I don't know. That's maybe a little bug, because I don't think the other secret locations were... Yeah, they don't let me replay the glyph from here, so that must be a little bit bugged or something. But I think that's enough database entries for today. So with that, thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for next time, and stay safe out there, and we'll see you then.